I wasn't a really good mother. I was high. I've joined a lot of churches and I always quit. And I quit because of my shame. We started watching online because you don't want to just walk into a church and, they gobble you up. So this is my resurrection story in a nutshell. My entire life has either been in active addiction or recovery from addiction. My determination and best efforts had failed me. I've joined some churches, and quite frankly, I was repulsed by hate the sin, love the sinner line, because we're gay. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I realized he has been resurrected. Here I was in a room full of throwaways, not the cream of the crop. And we had been raised from the dead, released from our prisons, and that I am more than the worst thing I've ever done. And that is what I think being resurrected really means, becoming who I was always meant to be.
I have invited friends and members of Bethel Church to share their own contemporary resurrection stories. And this morning, Karen is going to be sharing her story. She and Lisa are new to Bethel. But because of the power of the story that they have shared, Karen in particular, I felt God speaking to me saying, this might be a person who was relatively new who could bring a story that we could all learn from and benefit from. So let's hear from Karen about her own resurrection story.
Let's see, I'm 73. I have 3 kids. Unlike the woman who shared her story last week, I wasn't a really good mother. I was high most of the first one's early years till he was about 12. I wanted to tell a little bit about how we found this church. We'd been looking, I've joined a lot of churches and I always quit. And I quit because of my shame. And that's that simple. I mean, I could go into the long story, but that's it in a nutshell. And that I make up a story that I don't belong. And I don't tell anybody my story. I just make it up and leave. And so we started watching online because you don't want to just walk into a church and, they gobble you up. So I just wanted to just come in and watch it from afar. And the sermons that we heard were impactful. And by that I mean after they're over, I'm still thinking about them. And so that was the first thing. Then we came. Lisa's much more friendly than I'm friendly, but she's a lot more friendly than I am. And she wants to mingle and get to know everybody. I don't. So we're very different there, and I kind of just try to get along. We came Easter, and when everybody was talking and about Easter, and then when Pastor David shared a story about many resurrections, because I had just been thinking, how come I don't feel that? How come I don't? Did he really raise from the dead? And who cares if he really did? Is it that big of a deal? And in my own mind, I'm kind of going through this, and then you shared your story about your dad. This is my resurrection story in a nutshell. This is who I was. I've been who I was first and who I am now thanks to recovery. What I call God with skin on. Donna was my first friend that I had, and I was 32 years old. And Lisa, my sweet wife, and now many more people, but they were the first 2. I had what was called a corrective emotional experience with those 2 women and many more who have crossed my path, and I would like to be that for others and have the privilege of doing that. I was born into a family of addiction and violence, and I became addicted and violent. And I developed many maladaptive coping mechanisms. I've learned all the right words, but it's a nice word for being raised by wolves and becoming one of them, and believing I needed to learn how to hunt or I would be hunted, all to avoid the pain and escape the chaos and fear. My entire life has either been in active addiction or recovery from addiction. I'm not doing this again. I'm coming back as a frog or something. I am not doing this road again. Food was my first. I used to weigh over close to 300 pounds, and I've been able to maintain that weight loss now for not through surgery or any of that other crazy stuff, just following a food plan and working a program since 2003. Cigarettes, I loved. Everything I loved that I was addicted to, I loved it. And I did it with a vengeance. Drugs, alcohol, sex, anger, rage. I'm a serial marrier until I found Lisa, because I don't really like men, but I mean, I like men, but you get my drift. But it took me a while to discover that. In 1980, after a very tragic loss in my family, I decided to take revenge. This was the last person that was going to get away with it. I could not stop using substances, so I stepped into the 12-step rooms, not with the best of motives to start a recovery process. It was the perfect meeting for me, without a doubt. God was leading that. They were like me, and they didn't hold hands, they didn't welcome you, they weren't excited you were there, none of that. And that worked perfect for me. 45 days later, I was drunk, and I don't even like alcohol. I'm a drug addict. So I was living in a commune in a basement, which is a whole nother story. This was a very important moment when I drank, though. This is the day I came to the end of myself. My determination and best efforts had failed me. I believed I had betrayed my purpose of taking revenge. This all happened in the morning when I came to. I had come to the end of myself, is what I like to call it, surrender. The very first prayer I said, because I was a God hater, was, I don't want to get chummy, I just don't want to get high. And I have not had a drug or a drink since then. Eventually the food, codependency, weird-ass, or very strange relationships, and on and on and on. So fast forward to now. I have kept my spiritual life very private. Once I got over being so angry at God, and when I go to heaven, if there is one, I guess, I want to ask him, what were you thinking? I've said to him before, dude, no wonder you don't have a lot of friends. Are you looking around down here? I've joined some churches, and quite frankly, I was repulsed by hate the sin, love the sinner line, because we're gay. And it seems to me any sentence that starts with hate is going to be a problem. So I joined and quit lots of churches. They've been told I was just married to the wrong man. I've been married to every one of them. I mean, I'm a serial marrier. Believe me, I gave it my best shot. This Easter, looked for many resurrections, and I thought, really? When I have shame on board, even when I don't know I do, I get cynical and critical. Maybe like Peter when he didn't believe it was really Jesus who had come back to life. I hope I got that part right. I'm not, a scholar or anything. So he probably was living in shame about what he'd done. And so just like me and my own despicable behaviors. Easter Sunday afternoon, I went to a 12-step meeting that afternoon, me and Lisa, for a totally different reason. It's how God keeps his anonymity. Particular with a bunch of people that everybody else had given up on, a bunch of throwaways. The guy chairing the meeting that day was a throwaway, had been incarcerated many, many years, no doubt, had done some despicable things. He shared his story. He was clean about 15 or 14 years. He was out of prison. He goes back in now to help guys get out successfully. He has custody of his 14-year-old daughter, which, well, anyway, I won't go into that. It's just a blooming miracle. And he goes to work. He's a productive member of society. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I realized he has been resurrected. Here I was in a room full of throwaways, not the cream of the crop. And we had been raised from the dead, released from our prisons. And then I realized, because of what I do in my life, I get to see people raised from the dead every day. And that I am more than the worst thing I've ever done. And that is what I think being resurrected really means, becoming who I was always meant to be. Thank you.
I thought there was a story there. Thank you, Karen and Lisa. My sermon's going to kind of... Welcome to Bethel Congregational United Church of Christ, where whoever you are or wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. And that includes those of you who have gathered here in the sanctuary, and also we want to invite those of you who have joined via Facebook and Zoom. Know that you are part of our community and hope that you will feel embraced by the love of God wherever you are.